Okay, making a video on how to make pasta. I'm going to talk about your basic pasta technique, different ways. There's a lot of different variations of the traditional Italian pasta recipe. So I'm going to talk about the ingredients, definitely show you some of the technique. This is a video that I made, this one right here on YouTube. I made a couple weeks ago, and they actually turned, this is like 51 minutes. I'm going to skim through this a little bit just to show you basic technique. But they actually turned this into a quick 90-second little short video on Tasty. And we're using it to promote different things. But I have the raw footage here, so I want to use this just to kind of show you. Since it's not a face-to-face class, but it's great to show you different techniques. This is a wonderful technique. And hopefully you're going to want to go out and make pasta shortly after you watch this video. If you've never made pasta before, it's not that difficult to do. All you need is your hands. I love making pasta. It's besides just a great way to make a decent amount of food with very little money. It's fun to do, and it's fun to do it by hand. And I'm going to show it to you. So I'm going to go over all the ingredients, and all you really need for this is just your basic ingredients right here, which I'll review in this pasta rolling machine here. I'll show you too. All right, so let's get right into this. I'm going to actually stop sharing the video of me, because if I keep this on, it'll actually cover up part of the screen. So let's see if I can do that. Yeah, I'm going to stop the video of me, and then now you just be able to see my screen. And I'm going to enlarge this and just make sure. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to really make sure that all you can see is the screen and not me. Okay. So this recipe is called handmade goat cheese tortellini and spicy marinara sauce. So we're making a certain kind of pasta recipe that is really great for making tortellinis. You've probably all seen tortellinis before. It's that twisted, turned, kind of hat-shaped looking stuffed pasta, right? So because of this, I use a certain recipe that has a lot more egg yolks in it. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So I'm going to go over these ingredients real quick. Before I get to that, a couple of the tools that you're going to need for this. This is a pasta rolling machine. It's made by Atlas. There's different brands out there. Anyone will do. It's a stainless steel pasta roller. It has a hand crank on it. And then it has these two stainless steel rollers here that you can bring out and bring in and make it thick or thin, depending on what you're rolling through there. And you adjust that by this dial here. So it's really simple. This dial turns it from 0 all the way up to 10, I believe, 10 being the thinnest, paper thin. I'm going to roll this dough out to about 7, I think, for the tortellini. Every machine's different, though, so you're kind of looking for certain things versus just memorizing the number that I'm telling you right here. So this is just a simple machine. This is about $30 to $40. That's it. $30, $40, I think, you can get it, but I've seen them at Target. You can get it on Amazon. Heck, even if you get it used, I mean, it's still probably fine. You can actually, if you're real mechanical, you can actually take this whole thing apart in the pieces and clean it if you get a used one that needs a little work on it. But real simple machine, okay? There's also a accessory piece that connects to the end here. You see where my cursor is? The little connector piece that attaches onto the end here, and then you just put the crank on that, and it allows you to cut your pasta sheets into fettuccine or spaghetti. Okay, but I don't have it on here now because I'm not making the fettuccine. I'm making tortellini. All right. Then I have a bench knife here. This bench knife is you definitely need one of these. It's even when you're not making pasta. This is, besides your chef knife and carving knife, a bench knife is great to have. It's just a scraper. It's a metal scraper. It's not real sharp on the end. It's used by bakers and pastry chefs. Use it to cut and measure things. And also, I love using it just to clean, maybe to bring the dough into the middle of the table. It's a really good tool here. We're just talking $5, $10 for a good one. You can get they make plastic ones too. And then I have a pizza roller, or just a cutter here that I use to cut the pasta sheets into tortellini rectangles that I'll then fold over and turn into tortellini, okay? And then let's talk about these basic ingredients here, okay? Because I know you might be making this and you might say, well, I don't have all those ingredients or what, but I'm going to give you just a basic formula on how to make pasta in this video, and I'll talk about maybe ways you can interchange and modify some of these ingredients. So this first bowl right here, I have 400 grams of AP flour, okay? 400 grams of AP flour. I'll talk about what AP is and all that stuff. You might already know, but I'll talk about that. I have 75 grams of semolina flour. It's still a wheat flour. It's durum flour. It's more granular. It's larger granular shape. It's pretty yellow, but it's still, they're both wheat flours. But 75 grams of the semolina and 400 grams of the AP flour. I have 12 yolks. I don't have any egg white. Well, I just took the egg yolks out of 12 eggs, okay? So just the egg yolks. And the reason why I use all yolks in this recipe is because that's going to give my dough more fat, and it's going to make it more pliable, more wax-like. It'll still be strong, but it'll be less likely to dry out if I have those long sheets laying on the table there. So when you're making tortellini, you'll see me. I'll show it to you. You're going to have a long sheet rolled out and cut, and you'll have your filling piped onto each little mini rectangle. So you don't want that pasta will dry out pretty quickly, especially if you're in a dry climate. But just the extra yolks will make it a more rich dough, but it'll also make it a little more pliable, more Play-Doh-like. Does that make sense? Hopefully that helps. I have 2 tablespoons of olive oil in this recipe, and then I have a little bowl here, a little small spice bowl here of kosher salt, and I put a couple large pinches of salt in there, and then this last bowl is water. I never really say how much water because it depends how old the flour is, how much flour, what kind of flour. So on the water, it's just as needed, and that'll make sense when I show you the technique. Okay. Back to the flour though. You can use bread. You can use AP. You typically won't use all pastry flour. Pastry flour is, well, let me start over again. Bread flour has the highest gluten percentage. Bread flour, it says bread flour on the bag when you buy it in the store, has a very high gluten content. Gluten is just the protein. Okay, gluten is protein that is in the flour here. That once you add water to it, the moisture will activate the gluten, the protein strands in the flour, and then that's what's going to help give. That's going to help give you a strong muscle-like dough. That is great. That's why you want a real high gluten content when you're making artisan bread or Italian bread or ciabatta. You want a really high gluten percentage, and that's bread flour. This is AP flour. This is the next level down. This has a little bit less of a gluten percentage, but it's still fairly strong. I just use it because I didn't have bread flour. I usually use bread flour, but this is AP flour, works great. And then of course pastry flour, which is it's a different kind of flour. It's more cornstarch, more of a fine tight feel to it. That has a lower gluten content percentage, and that's what you'll see used exclusively in like croissants, danishes, stuff like that. Now, again, some people will put a little pastry flour in their pasta dough. Some people will put a little bread flour. To each his own. This recipe, I have straight AP flour here, 400 grams, and then I have 75 grams, as I said, of semolina flour, and I like putting the semolina in there because it gives it a little more of a yellow color, pretty color, and the flavor is the texture. It adds a different kind of texture to it. I don't put a whole lot. I just put 75 grams in there. But again, you can do 50% semolina or even 100% semolina if you want. To each his own, right? The eggs. Again, some pasta recipes, like in southern Italy, don't even use eggs. So you really don't even need eggs to make pasta. All you need to make pasta is basically flour and water, or flour and some kind of moisture. Okay. The eggs obviously enrich the dough. I usually use eggs in all the pastas that I make. But again, you don't traditionally have to. Vary region to region in Italy. All of your northern Italian doughs have egg in it and oil in it, and but there's southern doughs that don't at all. Okay, so let's get right into it. So I'm gonna hit play here, And let's see. There we go. Yeah, so you just take the flour. Again, I like making it all by hand. I use the bowl here to kind of make a well in the middle of the pile of flour there. Add in my semolina flour. Add them all in together. Throw in all my yolks. Uh, I will make, the pause right there. I love making pasta by hand for a couple reasons. I can kind of, I get more in tune with how the dough feels. It's usually a foolproof way of making it because you can actually tell if you have too much water, not enough water, and it's just fun to do. It's very therapeutic to me. And this recipe, by the way, you might even want to cut this in half or by four. This will make a ton of pasta. This is going to make, gosh, this will probably make over 100 tortellini. Okay, so keep that in mind. But again, making it by hand, I think, is one of the best ways to do it. You could use a mixer or a robo-coupe or a food processor. Okay, I just put a few pinches of salt in there, which is fine. If you're making a ton of dough for a banquet or something, you might want to use a mixer. But again, doing it by hand is great. Okay, so yeah, just kind of bringing all the egg together. And that little well helps you do this. It helps the egg from kind of seeping out and running all over the table. Again, I haven't added the water yet, okay? Right now, I'm just trying to form it into a ball. So as you can see here, it almost looks like I'm making, it almost looks like I just cut in some fat and I'm making pie crust, right? It's kind of the same thing. I'm trying to turn this into a crumbly, incorporated mix of just crumbly, almost cornmeal-like pile here before I add the water, okay? And then as far as how much water, I'll usually just add enough water until I'm able to bring all this into a dough ball, which we'll see. This will end up, everything on this table here, nothing will go to waste. It'll all be formed into this big dough ball, pasta dough ball. Okay, and I'm real careful on how much water I use, okay? I don't dump a bunch of water in at once. I'm gonna add the water in on 2 stages here. So now I'm starting to kind of bind it together with my hands. You can tell I'm passionate, but I love making pasta. It's such a fun thing to do. You can bring your family into the mix here, your kids, your friends, your loved ones. I just had a bunch of girls from my kids' volleyball team over, and I made a bunch of pasta dough, and then we all rolled it out together. And then I gave them a couple pastry bags of the filling we used, and I had them pipe the filling in, and we made, they screwed up a couple tortellinis or a bit of it, but they had fun with it, and we ended up making some really good pasta. So anybody can do this, right? The only difference between me and them was that I've done it, hundreds of times. Okay, I'm going to get some more water because as you can see, it's still kind of crumbly here. So add a little more water in there. And you don't want to, so if you add too much water, that's where you kind of run into trouble, I think. Now, if I added too much water, I could probably add a little more flour back in as I'm mixing this up, but then it kind of throws off the fat to water ratio. So I'm real careful to just add just enough water to bind it up all together, okay? So hands are gonna get some caked flour up in there. You just rub them off, and my hands were washed. I usually take my wedding ring off, but I didn't here for some reason. That dough scraper or that bench knife there is very helpful. It rips everything off the table and gets everything back into the center. And then I'm gonna push it down. I'm gonna push this down and bring that small pile of leftover crumbs right into the middle there. So what I'm doing now, you see, I'm kneading it, okay? It's important to knead it. So the water activated the gluten in the flour, okay? But now, through kneading it, I'm stretching those strands of gluten out, and then I'm folding them over on top of each other, and I'm creating layers of gluten and layers of gluten and layers of gluten. And by doing that, I'm making this ball of dough here very strong, so we can withstand going through this pasta rolling machine here, and it won't break up after a few passes. It does in the beginning a little bit, but you'll see that the strength of the dough is very important. And the only way to get that strength is to knead it. So what I'm actually doing is I'm pushing the palm of my hand. You see that right there? I'm pushing the palm of my hand into the dough, and I'm pushing it out, and then I'm taking my other hand and folding it back over and then pushing it again. And that's the process I use. And I'll do this for about 4 to 5 minutes until the dough is strong enough. How do you know when it's strong enough? Well, I think I'll show you. There's a point in here where I actually push my finger down into the dough, and I'm looking for spring back. And I want it to kind of spring back quickly. But that takes, again, to get to that state, you need about 4 to 5 minutes of kneading. And it depends how fast you go too. But I'm using my body weight and just kind of leaning in on it and using my hand. Okay, see how nothing goes to waste here. We're talking pennies here, folks. This is not, not much investment here in this dough ball. And it's going to produce a lot of pasta I could probably feed, how many people could I feed with this? I could probably feed 15 to 18 people with this dough, with this recipe. Picking up all the pieces there, and then we're like 4.5 minutes in, I think. And it's definitely not quite. I've got a couple more minutes of kneading here. And I'm trying to see if yeah, so I forwarded a little bit. I forwarded a couple minutes. Now watch what I do with my hand. See? I push my finger down in the dough there, and I paused it, but it doesn't spring back very fast, which is telling me to keep on going, okay? So that's exactly what I see. It doesn't spring back. So I'm gonna work in another couple minutes. And look at that, the table is clean, and there's no crumbs on the table. I got a nice dough ball there. It's a nice tough dough, strong dough. You can't tell from the camera angle, but I'm really pushing down with my whole entire body and flattening it out and just pushing it. And this is the same technique you would use when you're making bread. Any kind of French or Italian artisan loaf, ciabatta, uses the same technique you would use. And again, this would take place inside your mixer with the dough hook. So if you have a nice KitchenAid or heavy-duty mixer or something, right? This is what your dough hook is doing in the bowl there when you turn the power on. It's pushing that and stretching that dough around that bowl and using that dough arm or that dough hook to do the exact same thing I'm doing with my hands, and it's developing more muscle in this dough. It's further developing the gluten. Okay, but again, why not use your own hands and get a good workout in the process? So, right, all right. Now I push it down, and it's looking pretty good, but I take it a little further. Okay, so now what I'm doing now, I forwarded ahead to a couple minutes. So now what I'm doing is I'm shaping the dough with my hand. I'm pressing it out and trying to form like a rectangle or square shape dough. I'm flattening it out, and then I'm going to wrap it in plastic wrap. But I don't keep it in a ball. I like flattening it out and getting it ready for the roller here. Okay, so I'm actually trying to get it to the same width as this. When I roll this dough through this roller, I want to use the full width of the roller here. So as you can see here, I'm actually shaping it into that width right now. That's a good little trick. You see that? So that's about the same thickness, or width, I should say, of this. Plastic wrap, and I'm going to let it rest for about 30 minutes. 30 minutes. An hour is probably even better. I think as you can see, I may not rest this as long as I should have, but that's okay. But I'll let this sit for about a half hour, and then it'll be ready to go. But again, an hour is probably even better. You can I let it sit out. You can put it in your refrigerator and you can make this dough the night before, and then put it in your refrigerator in plastic wrap, and then the next morning you have dough ready to go. Of course, if you put it in the fridge and let it sit for more than, 24 hours, it'll actually kind of it'll oxidize. It'll start to turn gray, as a matter of fact, because it's natural and I don't have any preservatives in there. So you don't want to really make dough too far ahead of time. And there's no sense in making this and freezing large amounts of this. It's silly. That doesn't make any sense because that's going to affect the quality of your pasta. So as you can see, this only took about 5 minutes to make by hand. That's going to, again, 5 minutes to feed 15 to 20 people. Not bad, right? Okay, now I think I move on to the sauce. Yeah, so here's the sauce. Basic marinara sauce. You can Google basic marinara sauce online. This is my version of it. This is kind of how I like to make a marinara sauce. You could make this in about 30 minutes or an hour, and you'll have a decent marinara sauce. It's not your traditional Italian grandmother gravy, classic gravy that's being cooked all day with veal bones in it and stuff like that. That's a whole nother level of richness. This is just a real simple marinara, okay? And let me tell you the ingredients I have here. I have some olive oil, okay? It's actually olive oil. It's a light olive oil that I'm sauteing in. And then I have onions here, okay? Some diced onions. I have a lot of garlic here. Okay, I'm going to guess at this. I think I've got about a half of an onion diced. I have about 5 or 6 garlic cloves minced up, okay? I have about a quarter cup of sherry wine, okay, like a sherry, not a sherry vinegar, just sherry. You could use red wine. I like using sherry. That's kind of my own trick. Not trick, but my own kind of secret to my marinara. I use sherry. It's a little sweeter. And then I have tomato paste right here. I have crushed tomatoes that came out of a can. Nothing wrong with canned tomatoes. One thing I like about canned tomatoes, and other chefs do too, including good chefs depend on canned tomatoes because they all have the same acidity level depending on the brand you get. So you want to get a good brand that you use all the time, whether it's crushed, whether they're diced, whether they're kept whole or maybe skinned. But if you're using the same brand over and over again, you're going to get the same acidity level, which will make your recipes more predictable, okay? If you're using fresh tomatoes for sauces like this, it can be a little tricky because you might get some tomatoes that aren't quite as ripe or some that are really ripe, okay? So I always use canned tomatoes. So did Escoffier. Not sure if you know who Escoffier is, but probably one of the most famous chefs that's ever lived. He swore by canned tomatoes. Okay, I have some pepper flakes here for a little zing. Again, I'm not making it super spicy, but I just put a few pinches of that in there. And then I have cracked pepper and salt. And then I have some basil leaves. These are basil leaves that I'm going to rip up at the very end, okay? And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. It's just a basic recipe. I sauteed down my onions for a few minutes. Then I add in my, you can see there I got the heat on. Then I add in my garlic. Okay, I cook that down for a few minutes, and just to I get like a light brown color, not real dark. And then I'll add in my tomato paste, add a little bit of my pepper flakes. I'll cook that down a little bit. I'm forwarding through this, okay? Then I'll add in my, I deglaze with my sherry, and then I add in my crushed tomatoes. And I'll bring it up to a simmer, and then I'll simmer that with a lid on it for about a half hour. And that's all I did for this video, and it comes out fantastic. It's just a really, really good recipe. It's basic. I love it. It's great. And then I'll rip up the basil leaves, and I'll have a really nice sauce that'll go with those tortellinis. Okay, let's get back into the pasta. Okay, so back on the table, I have the pasta. You can see it, man. I can kind of feel it by just looking at it, right? It's relaxed a little bit. It's not quite as springy, but it has strength in here. But just that half-hour rest has really kind of turned it into a nice, pliable, Play-Doh-like feel, and it's going to work really nice on this roller here. So I'm pressing it down because it's hard to fit a big thick slab of pasta or a pasta dough between these two rollers. You need to kind of help it out a little bit. So I'm flattening it out and making it a little bit thinner so it's able to work its way through the pasta rollers there. And then I put some flour on there, because you don't want it to stick to the rollers. Just put a little flour on there. I'll put flour on as I go. And then now I'm going to go on to then I go over here onto and I can just kind of tell. I remember when I was making this, I could have let this rest a little more, but I was trying to get this done for the camera guy, Andres. So I have a little challenging moment here where I'm just trying to get it all through, but eventually I do get it all the way through. And then what I do is, so I have it on the thickest setting right here. But so what I end up doing is I actually end up rolling it out. It breaks up a little bit. You'll see right here. See that? And then I'm going to take some of the extra pieces that broke off, and I'm going to lay them right on top of here. So I'm going to make a sandwich out of this. I'm going to combine them all together, and then I'm going to roll them through again. Okay. So look at that. It looks kind of like a big hot mess there, but wait till you see it. Okay. And it's just, all I'm doing is I'm just kind of pressing it all together again, and then I'm working it through again, and then eventually I'll have I'm still on the thinnest setting too. So rolling it through, and then this just took a couple minutes, and then eventually I'm trying to get it to the full. I want it to the full width. I want it the full width of that pasta machine, and so after a couple minutes of rolling it through the same thickness, I eventually have a nice long sheet here. But that's going to probably at least quadruple, and that's probably going to quadruple in length. It's going to get very long. And that technique there, you see how I kind of pleated it back on itself? That is a very important technique. That's going to allow you to wrap up your pasta in a way where it'll just feed nicely when it's put back through the rollers, okay? So I'll show you that technique a bunch of times. So you see how as soon as the machine, or as soon as the rollers grab the dough, I'm going to drop this folded up pasta with my right hand. I'm going to drop it onto the table here, and then I'm just going to work it through. So you want to let go. You want to let go and just let it fall to the table. That's another important technique. And then use your other hand to kind of guide it through. See that? And then I have a nice long sheet of dough. See that technique there? Let me go back there. I'll see if I can go back without. Watch this. Watch my left hand. I'm going to fold it over, and then I'm going to grab the end and then fold it over, and then grab the end and fold it over, and I'm going to kind of pleat it like accordion, wrap it up together, and that will allow you to have a lot of dough in your hand at one time. You won't have to be fighting it and have it fall on the floor, and you won't need to call a friend over to help you. There's no reason why two people should need to roll the dough out. There really isn't. One person can do it, and you can do almost like 6 feet of dough or 10 feet of dough. You see that? I kind of fold it on itself, and now I'm starting to tighten up the rollers here and making it thinner. So I'm going up another number, and it's making it thinner. Each time I go through here, it makes it thinner. And at this point, I'm just going through each number one time because I'm comfortable with the way this dough is rolling out. I don't need to do 2 passes per number. After the first number or 2, when it's really thick, I'll do maybe twice or 3 times. But at this point, now I'm just using 1 number. Okay, and that's a very important way to do it. And I'm trying to touch the dough as less as possible, okay? And I want to keep it floured all the way through so it won't stick to the rollers. And one way to do that is to just sprinkle some flour on there and then roll it through by that little shuffle I'm doing there, okay? Again, that's the move right there you want to master. It's not that difficult, right? And I put it on my other hand, I let it grab it, and then I drop it onto the table there. And I'm not sure what number. I'm probably on like 3 at this time, maybe 4. I'm going to kind of forward through here a little bit, but you'll see as I work it down, it'll get thinner and thinner and thinner. And it really depends what you're making. If you're making a fettuccine or a spaghetti or even a tagliatelle, you're going to want it on this machine probably a 5 or a 6, and it'll still be somewhat thick. If you're making a tortellini, I'll take it down even thinner. I want the tortellini sheet really thin, because what's going to happen when you're making tortellini, you're going to fold it over on itself to make it look a little ravioli that you're then going to twist and turn into a little hat, right? That's a tortellini. So you're going to want your dough really thin. And look at all that dough. I'm not sure how long that is, but it's got to be 8, 9 feet. Well, not quite that yet, but it will be. But again, because we worked the dough for 4 to 5 minutes and got it pretty tough and really put some muscle into it, it's handling really nice. Okay. Okay, so now I'm cutting off. I realize at this point in this video that because of time and everything, I'm not going to turn this whole sheet of dough into tortellini. So I'm taking off 3 sheets, and I'm going to turn these 3 sheets into fettuccine that I do later. I don't show it to you in here, but I'm just cutting off. That's a portion of fettuccine right there, and I do 3 of these at 3 sheets, and then I think I ended up giving that fettuccine to the camera guy, to Andres, and yeah, and I'm using the bench scraper to measure. So I have a real long piece of fettuccine there, a smaller piece of fettuccine here, and then the rest of this dough right here, I'm going to turn it into tortellini. So again, but I'm not quite thin enough. So I'm gonna roll it out one more time. So yeah, that I kind of skipped ahead, but I rolled it out one more time. Now it's pretty thin. You can almost see your hand through it. If you put your hand underneath this pasta, you can see your hand, the light. You can see the light through your hand there. Okay. So I put plastic wrap on this folded up section here so it doesn't dry out. And then now all I'm doing is I'm using that cutter, and I'll take this piece and I'm going to cut it down the middle. I'm going to cut it down the middle here, you'll see me. And then I'm going to cut sections of like rectangle sections. Each one will represent an actual tortellini, okay? Okay, and then I use my hand as a measure, as a guide. So cutting these in pieces. So I do about a finger length. And so since I cut it down the middle, that's going to give me these rectangles to make the tortellinis. Now I also have I skipped ahead. I have a bowl of egg wash here, which is just 1 egg with a little bit of water in there that I whisked up pretty good. And I'm going to take a brush and I'm going to brush each rectangle with a little bit of egg. Okay. And what that's going to do is it's kind of going to waterproof the inside of the tortellini, and also, so when I put the filling on, it'll keep the filling from turning the pasta soggy, right? If it's sitting for a while, and it'll also help the pasta stick to itself when I fold it over. Okay, so there we go. Little brush of egg wash there on each rectangle, and I'm not gonna see. I'll skip ahead a little bit. Okay. And then what the filling I have, you see the filling right here? The filling is right in this bag here. It's just goat cheese I got from Publix, and I took a couple forks and kind of fluffed it up a little bit so it was, pipeable. And it's in a piping bag here. Okay, you can make a piping bag out of a Ziploc bag. I have an actual piping bag that we have at the CIL. And I think I put a little salt and pepper. That was it. Salt and pepper and goat cheese. That's all I have in there. That's it. Real simple filling. But you can do any kind of fillings. You can do, pureed butternut squash that was roasted in the oven and cooled down. You could do mushroom, like mushroom puree. You could do ground meats, forced meats. Anything goes on the filling, folks. That's what's fun about this. All right, so I'm going to put the egg wash down, and now I'm going to pipe in the goat cheese. All right, so there we go. The piping bag makes it really easy to portion out the goat cheese. Okay, so there we go. Got a bunch of them there, and again, I'm loving the fact that I have a heavy egg yolk ratio on this dough, because this dough is not going to dry out. When I'm starting to make these, I'm going to start from here and work my way down. By the time I get to the end, I'm still going to have dough that's very pliable and not dried out. Okay, and that's thanks to the egg yolk. All right, so all I'm doing is I'm taking it and I'm folding it over. Can you see that? I'm folding one, almost like I'm closing a book. okay? I'm picking up the little piece, I'm folding it over, I'm connecting it with the other piece of pasta there, and I'm squeezing out the air. So I'm kind of crimping it, okay? Using my fingers, I'm forming my fingers around the goat cheese ball. I'm pressing down, and I'm getting rid of the air, as much air as I can, and I'm just kind of sealing it. So I'm just sealing these up is all I'm doing. Crimping it, sealing, crimping it, sealing, okay? And then, so right now, those are technically raviolis, right? There's a couple different ways to make raviolis, but those are a book fold ravioli. And let's skip ahead. So you'll see I'll have all of them done. Okay. And you could cook those and you'd be ready to go. Those would be ready to go, some raviolis, right? But I'm taking this and I'm wrapping it around my finger, and then I'm pinching with my thumb and forefinger. So I'm just wrapping this ravioli, which is now ravioli, wrapping it around my middle finger. I'm pinching to kind of connect the two corners, and then I'm going to turn it inside out like a sock and turn it into a tortellini. You'll see. There'll be a close-up view of this in a second, okay, at the end. So again, twisting it around my finger, pinching it, turning it inside out. Place it on my, and then I just let those sit on some flour so they don't stick. But you know, I had no problem with these sticking to the table because the dough was, again, if you have a dough that has too much water in it, you might have stickage and might have some problems with sticking to the table, but this dough came out pretty nice. Again, twisting, pinching, turning inside out, okay? Skip ahead here. And again, I think there's probably, I don't know, over 20 tortellinis right here, and I haven't even, I've only used about a fourth or fifth of the dough here. All right, let's see. Yeah, so now I'm starting it with the other sheet, and I'm going to skip ahead here. So I think here's the close-up. This is a good close-up. I just want to show you the technique on the twist. See, they look like little hats, don't they? Here we go. All right, so again, just book folding over, crimping it. Look at that. Those aren't perfect. Look at that. I didn't even match up the ends there. But that's kind of what I like about this. Each one kind of looks homemade, but they all look similar, right? Okay. Again, I didn't do a perfect job on that, but it's all going to taste the same, and they look pretty, right? Again, hopefully, I think in another couple seconds here, I'm going to show you. It shows you the twist. Yeah, so see that? There we go. That's a good close-up view. So I turn it around, I twist it, I pinch it, and then I just turn it inside out, okay? One more time. Twist it, inside out. Wrap it around the finger, pinch it, turn it inside out. And there we go. Okay, so I think we got the idea there, right? So got a bunch of these tortellinis now. And, let's talk about that. So what to do with these after if you're not going to cook them right away. Let's go back here. All right, so now let's say, okay, so you make these, right? I would recommend cooking these off in the next 24 hours or less, okay? That's one thing. Now, you could freeze these at this point. You could take these, you could put them on a flour sheet pan, and you could put them in the freezer until it gets really cold. Then I would take it back out, and then I would wrap it up quickly with plastic wrap, and then put it back in the freezer. So you don't want to trap moisture in your freezer because that'll turn into ice and it'll ruin your pasta. So the trick is that putting it on a sheet pan, freezing it, and then wrapping it up after it chills down a little bit. But again, my opinion, don't freeze it. You know, make your pasta fresh, cook it fresh, and then make it the next time you're going to do it fresh. But again, sometimes in banquets, if you're working in a large kitchen and you're working in banquets, sometimes you might have to do it a day ahead of time. Now, let's say I'm making this in the morning and I want to use it in the evening for maybe a nice dinner. No problem. I would take these and I would put these on a sheet pan or on a plate, and then I would put a towel, okay? Put a cloth towel, not wet, a dry cloth towel over the plate, and then put that in my refrigerator, and those will stay in there for hours until you need them later on in the day, and then you can take them out and cook them off, okay? All right, so now I got my water going, and I'm about to plate this up, okay? The cool thing about these fresh tortellinis, guess what? These things cook in about 3 minutes. They cook fast, okay? Ones you buy at the store, you're talking 7, 8 minutes, sometimes 9 minutes. These cook in 3 minutes. So I have some salted boiling water here. Okay, you kind of, how much salt? You want the water to taste like the ocean a little bit. And then I'm just going to drop those right in there. Stir it around a little bit, and those will be done in just a few minutes. They'll float to the top there. But again, I give them about a few minutes. If you're not sure, you can take one out and pinch it and see if the pasta snaps, and you want them al dente. And then I'm gonna put these right out of the water right into a bowl. And yeah, I take them right out into a bowl, and then I drizzle some olive oil on there. I could spoon some of my tomato sauce in there too, but for this plate up, all I'm putting on there is oil, a little salt, and cracked pepper, and then I'm going to plate it up. There's the plate, and we're almost at the end here. Okay, get my sauce there. And yeah, this sauce I only cooked for about 30-40 minutes, and I ripped up some basil, and I was pretty happy with it. Put that right in the middle of the table or the plate there, and then I'm going to place the tortellinis on top. And again, I coated them in oil so they kind of look pretty. They're kind of shining, and they're a little salt, pepper on there, and then I'm just going to sprinkle with some Parmesan. So, folks, go out, man, go out and borrow or buy a pasta roller. It'll be worth its weight in gold, right? These ingredients are not expensive, okay? Oh, I forgot to mention too, 00 organic flour. If you can find 00 organic flour, I usually order it online. It's the best. Usually you have less issues with somebody who has a minor gluten allergy who can eat gluten, but sometimes if they have a minor gluten allergy, they can cope with an heirloom flour like that from Italy. Again, you got to be careful with that because you don't want to get anybody sick that has a gluten allergy. But just that flour in general, I think that's probably, I didn't mention that, but that's probably the best flour you can get. 00 organic flour from Italy. It's fantastic because think about that. It's not as genetically modified as a lot of the flours we use in this country. So it's more of a simple protein strand, and your body has an easier time breaking it down in your gut. So it's kind of common sense if you think about the science behind it. So try to get a good flour out there. So I hope this has motivated all of you to make some pasta. And hope you enjoyed this video. And if you have any questions on ingredients or techniques I was using in this, email me anytime. Have fun. Go make some pasta.